Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another fun-filled episode from Film Fanatic. Hope everyone's doing good. We just got another storm yesterday. I had another snow day. I had two snow days this week. And yesterday, Thursday, was a pretty busy day, or at least it was going to be, with a bunch of things. I had a rehearsal in the morning, and then I was going to go to work and then go teach a lesson and then have another rehearsal at night. I don't usually like to cram my days with an abundance of things, especially if I don't need to do it, but sometimes you have to do that for, obvious reasons for, working, you have to work with other people's schedules, and it's you got to, always take that into account. Sometimes it gets a little bit hectic with that kind of stuff, but you do what you do what you got to do to make it work. And again, try to make things copacetic, and always I try to always take the scheduling of how other people's lives are set up for those reasons. I so it's part of the whole thing. But that being said, everything got canceled, so it was I was home and got some practicing in and did some my usual stuff. So it was a pretty good day, I guess. Aside from that, I was pretty much home all day, and then today we didn't get very much. It was easy getting out. It was actually easy getting out. I didn't even have to use a snowblower. I was really surprised. But now, I guess on Saturday, this coming Saturday, we might be getting this massive snowstorm. So there's had some things scheduled on Saturday, so things might get canceled or moved to a different day. So it is what it is. Mother Nature will do what it wants to do, and we have to adjust to it. So good times to oh, and that always makes for a good time to crank out another movie, and also to do more reviews for movies. So yeah, I usually again, I always try to incorporate other things around these shows. I love to always talk about, well, for me, music, film, and all things around those two things. To me, they're like joint at the hip, and they're symbiotic. And so sometimes I go back and forth as to how I want to do some of these shows and what I want to talk about. Obviously, the movie, when I do these shows, it's always going to be centered on the movie that I'm going to be talking about, which is what I'm going to be doing today. And I go back and forth sometimes with the way I do it or the length of certain things. I've had some suggestions from people, and again, I love to hear feedback from people. Earlier on, when I started this channel, I was, really trying to figure out on how I wanted to kind of format these videos, and how I wanted to try to, where I wanted the focus of the videos to be. And then that branched out to, obviously doing interview segments, which I really love, and then also doing some specialty shows where I'll focus on not necessarily music, or sorry, not necessarily a movie review. I'll do, a discussion on a very particular director, or I did a show a few months ago where I talked about film critics, and how social media affects the climate of people's habits as far as certain movies they want to see or don't want to see, especially in the theater. Talked a lot about different things around the whole streaming kind of predicament that we're in, and that's usually something for me. Most people probably don't feel that it affects them, or it's something that they necessarily think about. But for me, it does because I really, one of my favorite experiences and one of my favorite things to do is to go to the theater. So I see how those things are greatly affected as far as movies that are available online and movies that are in the theater. And now it's gotten to the point where certain movies are, not available. Case in point, one movie I really want to see, and I've heard really great things, but I haven't seen any news or anything about it being released on DVD or Blu-ray, is the new Predator movie, and it's called Prey. I've heard lots of great things about it. And I almost, the other night, I've been wanting to see that movie for a long time. It came out during the summer, but it was only available online. And I typically never do any streaming. I think for the most part, the experience, well, to be blunt about it, I think the experience, for the most part, kind of just sucks. I rather see it in a theater first and foremost, but then also if I can get my hands of either by renting it like a good DVD copy of it, which I would probably get at Opera House Video, or especially a really great Blu-ray copy of it. To me, the theater experience and then getting the movie on Blu-ray is those are the ultimate experiences. The preferred way to see a film is in the theater, but seems like it gets harder and harder. So I had been looking up to see if there's any news about Prey, the latest installment in the Predator franchise. I had looked to see if there's any news about it coming out, and I heard some things about it. I saw a couple things, but generally I haven't really seen anything confirmed that it's actually going to be released. And it's as a consumer and as a fan of films, it's I find it really frustrating, and I just so once in a while I'll do that, and if I come across a film, and I know it's the only way to see the movie, I'll watch it online. But I've only done it a couple of times, and generally I feel like the experience is good, but it's a real like kind of subpar. Overall, it's an underwhelming kind of experience as opposed to like a real immersive experience. So I sometimes get desperate and I looked it up online and I found that it was online and I started to watch it. And then I'm like, this sucks. This sucks. Like the pixelation was off and I just was like, I shut it off. So those are the things that I sometimes go through as far as trying to see certain films. And also when it comes to newer movies, which I love to stay up on, there's a longer lag as to when I get to see them and to check them out. So that's a big difference. That's one thing when I said to how that affects me, as a fan, how that I feel like it affects me directly, and also people who are, you know, of that same kind of mindset. It can be frustrating. I have tons of things that I can watch and tons of things that I have to still watch that I still have to get to, and movies that I love that I watch over and over again. So as far as lack of things to watch, that's never a problem. But I do love to see new things and stay up on that, and it gets harder and harder at times. One movie I saw that I saw on streaming that was an exclusive Hulu production was the Hellraiser movie, which I really love, and I'm not sure what the status is of that as far as of it getting a Blu-ray release. It was not in theaters at all. That was a really big surprise of a movie. I really liked that movie. So we'll see. So it's a very different set of circumstances now as far as a person who wants to see movies but generally wants to have more of a cinematic experience. But it is what it is. But when I was saying in the beginning of the show, one of the things that I sometimes go back and forth with when I format these shows and when I set up these discussions is obviously I want to talk about the movie at hand, and I love to hear feedback from people, and I realize I'm still learning this whole thing and trying to figure things out. and I think it's gotten better. I think it's gotten focused over time, just because I do uh, videos all the time. So one suggestion I had from a couple of people was that maybe trying to curtail the focus of the video a little bit, like not necessarily talk about, like for example, there was a couple of videos that I had where they were about an hour long, and for about 20 minutes or so into the video, I didn't really talk about the movie at hand. I was still talking about music stuff and things. And so I'm conscious of that, and I try to not go far, get too lost in the woods about those kinds of other things. And I love hearing feedback about those things. Other folks that I've heard from have said that they like that I talk about other things, and that I kind of show how, for me at least, as a fan or as a film fanatic, all of these things are, for me, symbiotic. They're all kind of connected at the hip, so they're all like interconnected and so very very related, and that I keep it casual. So I understand that both of those things, but I one thing I've tried to do is to try to keep things a little bit more focused. I still go off on my little tangents or whatnot, but at the end of the day, I just feel comfortable talking about the music thing, particularly around my band Quantum, and some other things around that, around the music, on the music front or in the music front, and tying that in with film because, like I've said many, many times, to me, it's all the same thing. So it's all, you know, for me, it's kind of a natural way to kind of go about talking about these things. But at the same time, I realize I need to, probably keep things focused compared to, past videos where maybe it did go on too long. But it's all work in progress. So, but since I'm talking about some music things, the first thing I want to announce to and talk about is some new things that are happening in the Quantum world. My favorite band, Quantum, that I play in, and that's my own. That's my personal baby. That's my personal little child that I've been taking care of for a long time. It's it's my band. It's my outlet. It's I play with other bands. I play drums in other bands. I don't necessarily contribute musically. I mean, I do, but I don't necessarily contribute musically in terms of proactively like writing material for those bands. There are a few groups, two bands in particular that I have written music for, or we have used music that I've written in the past that we do use in the sets. One band in particular where we do use some of my music that I've written over the years is Electric Bonfire. That's a really fun band, and that's all like, for the most part, original psychedelic kind of rock that has elements of some funk and some reggae music and some, a little bit of electronica, very psychedelic. But it's pretty song-driven things, and I have a couple of songs, or a few songs for that I've written over the years that are part of that band. But I don't proactively write new music for that band. It's predominantly the other songwriters in the band. My great friend Mike Whitehead, who plays bass in Quantum, and John Luft, and Mitch Markowitz. It's predominantly those guys, and especially John and Mitch. It's their band. The other band that I use music that I have written music for, or I've taken some songs that I've written over the years and we've kind of adapted them to that band, is Simplexity, which is more of a jazz fusion based kind of a band, and that's again another all original project. And we have like about two or three songs that I that we play in that band that I've written, and or that I've like had a thing of where I presented it to the band. We kind of wrote it together where I had a strong idea. One of the songs that we use in that band is actually a Quantum song that was kind of on the back burner for a while in Quantum, but it felt like it worked pretty well in the context of that band. And the rest of the projects that I play in, I pretty much just I play drums and I try to contribute and try to do the job that's hopefully required for those projects. but I don't really necessarily contribute musically in the area of songwriting. But quantum is 100% about, for me, is about that, is about writing music. So that's my own private little weird, oasis of where I get to express that side of my brain. So it's my baby. It's my, it's my thing that I love, and it's the thing that I love. It's a project for me, and it always has been, probably will always be. The I find it the most rewarding, the most fun, but then also the hardest too, the most challenging, because it puts me in the space of kind of being the front man, and that's a space I've never really been comfortable. It pushes my limits, it pushes my boundaries as far as, trying to become, where I've tried to become a singer more or less, and to play keyboards, learn other instruments, and to, as well as drumming, using my my background as a drummer, percussion, using that in the music. So, but it pushes my my threshold as far as, what I've done for a while, and I really like that it's such a challenge in that regard. But we have some new things coming up with that band, which I'm really excited about. Uh, in May, the thing that I'm probably most excited about in May, Quantum will be playing. We're going to be playing two shows for the All Roads Festival, which is a really pretty big deal, at least here in the Mid Coast and in Maine. But it's a real big music festival that showcases all original music, mostly like on the indie rock side, but they have lots of different things within that context of music. They have some reggae bands. They have, some more experimental things. They have more like Americana and then indie rock, obviously, and some electronica. And I'm really excited because we're going to be playing two shows, Friday and a Saturday, at the All Roads Festival. We're going to be playing the Friday night. We will be playing at the Three Tides, which is probably the best venue in Belfast to see music, and it's a great draft house. It's a great pub, super cool place. So we'll be playing there on that Friday night, and then on Saturday we will be playing at the Underground Lounge, which is a newer venue that just opened up in Belfast, which is a super cool place. I played a gig there once, and I've been there to see music, and it's a really cool place. It's part of the Maskers Theater. It's in an old church, and there's a basement area where they have this new venue, the Underground Lounge. So we're going to be playing there as Quantum, doing a second set there on the following day, which is on a Saturday. And then the other show that we have, we will be doing, which we do every summer, and it won't be till the summer season, but we'll be doing our annual Quantum performance at the Camden Amphitheater, which is actually one of my favorite gigs. I love that place to death. We've been playing there for almost 4 or 5 years, which is crazy. And it's a sweet gig because the reason is the amphitheater is such a beautiful outdoor venue. I think it's one of the most gorgeous spots around. And it's right in Camden, Maine. It's part of the library, the Camden Library. But the amphitheater is just gorgeous because it's literally right on the ocean. There's a really nice wooded area that it's set in, and the acoustics are just really amazing in there. It's got all this natural reverb in that space, and it's a really beautiful setting. And it's usually a real casual kind of a gig because we just kind of set up and play for a couple hours. It's usually on a Sunday afternoon, and people come and go, and they uh, sometimes they come and have a good time and dance. And we've made a lot of new fans over the years by doing that show. And yet it's very laid back, and people come and go, and sometimes people come with their families and come with, they'll make a little lunch or a picnic, and it's always a different kind of vibe. And I like that it's kind of a laid back vibe, but it's a beautiful setting. So we're going to be doing that again this year, which I'm really excited about. I really look forward to doing that gig every year. And then we're also going to be doing a show, which is part of this brand new series, we're going to be doing a quantum show later this month, which will be on a Monday. We're going to be doing a show at the Myrtle Street Tavern in Rockland, Maine. Which initially I was really surprised and kind of shocked that we got a gig there because Myrtle Street Tavern typically has always had, more, harder edge like classic rock bands. I've been in bands that have played there over the years, and typically it's like a little bit more of a dive. It's a dive bar to a degree, but I've always really liked that place. But it's kind of a biker bar slash kind of working class kind of bar, but it's kind of it's a little bit on the divey side, which I like, which I love, and but I've had a lot of good times there, and it has sometimes a little bit of a rough reputation, but I like it a lot. I've always had great times going there. I've played there before, but they started this new series where they're trying to do these alternate kind of music nights, and they're doing, aside from their weekend nights where they have like classic rock bands or dance bands or cover bands, they're starting this new series where on Monday nights they're trying to do music that they don't ever usually have music that they typically never have there. They're having all like original based music. They're doing they're having this real eclectic mix of bands. One of the bands I play in, Bone Broth, which is an all you know uh, it's kind of a world music flavored kind of a project, but it's all improvised. We have a gig there, which I was really surprised, that's coming up, being that we don't really fit in that classic rock kind of mode at all. So, but they want to do something really really different, so they scheduled us to play there coming up on Monday, and they started this whole series where they're going to have all kind of alternative music. And so we're going to be doing a quantum show there, which I'm really excited about to see how things go, and that's going to be on a Monday night. So yeah, excited about some more events coming up, going into slowly getting into the spring summer season. So yeah, stay tuned, and more things. Keep things. Keep people posted, and I'll keep talking about new things as they develop. There'll be some promotional things going up pretty soon. So yeah, and again, one of my favorite things about this channel is I love that people comment, and that's been happening more and more. I've been getting lots of cool suggestions from people who say, well, if you like this movie, you might like this movie, or you like this director or this style, you might like this, and that's been happening more and more, and that's been really really cool. So I really appreciate people doing that. That's really, at the end of the day, that's what this whole channel is about. It's about these great movies, these movies that I have a deep love for and that constantly give me inspiration. So it's a great thing. So today's movie is about a movie that I consider to be just a beloved favorite of mine, and that is Life Force, a movie that I never ever hear talked about. I'm just like amazed. I watched this again. I watched this last night. I've owned this copy. This is a really beautiful steelbook edition on Blu-ray, and I should say 4K, and it's amazing. It's immaculate, and I never hear this movie ever talked about. It's crazy, as far as overall reviews and people that talk about their favorite horror films, science fiction films, and especially this was directed by Tobe Hooper, one of the most popular directors in all of horror. He, of course, directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, one of the most influential movies ever. And this movie, I think, is one of his best movies. This movie, I have such a deep kind of connection to this movie. I remember seeing this movie in the theater when I was a kid. And I don't remember this movie. It's a really wild movie. I mean, it's kind of bonkers crazy. And I think it's pretty bizarre. The whole storyline is really out to lunch. Like I watched this again last night, and I bought this steelbook edition, which is this again. It's just gorgeous. It comes with two discs. There's a theatrical version of the film, and then there's also a director's cut, and it's got a whole bunch of great special features. It's a beautiful package. The artwork is just amazing. It's all the original artwork. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the newer renditions of a lot of older films. A lot of the newer, a lot of I see it a lot on Facebook and social media where artists that are obviously very talented will make a newer kind of more modern illustration of the artwork. Or I've seen it on Blu-ray releases where a lot of companies will put out albums or put out movies, but they'll use like a more modern text or more modern artwork. But I can't. You keep for me, which is cool, but you just can't beat the original artwork. Like, if I get posters, which I have some posters, I try to only seek out the original. Like, case in point, I recently bought the original print for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Speaking of Tobe Hooper, and I made sure that I got the original print because you just can't beat that. There's a bazillion new renditions of it, but you just can't beat that. And I love that this has the original artwork because it's just so awesome and it just sums up the whole movie in a nutshell. But I remember seeing this movie in the theater, and I was a little kid. It came out in 1985. So I was 10 years old when this came out. And this movie is pretty bizarre. It's pretty bonkers. And I remember almost like it was yesterday that people were kind of freaked out by this movie. And I don't believe this movie made a whole lot of money. I don't think it was a commercial success. And I think it's attributed mostly because of the story and especially where the story goes, because essentially this movie it's a vampire movie, but it's a vampire movie more or less set in outer space. It's basically about this invasion from these space vampires, and it's bonkers. It's totally bonkers. And of course, like I said, it was directed by Tobe Hooper. The screenplay, which I forgot about, was created by Dan O'Bannon. And Dan O'Bannon is most notably, most well known for, he is the creator of the Alien franchise. He wrote the original story of Alien, Ridley Scott's masterpiece, that changed science fiction forever. And he was a writer for many years. He directed a few films, Dark Star. He directed Dark Star, which is a wild movie, which is a movie I eventually want to get. He directed a series of other films, mostly wrote screenplays, but I think one of the most important figures in science fiction history, really. I think Dan O'Bannon was, a real pivotal figure in the early stages of just really great kind of low budget science fiction, in that genre. Huge fan of him. I have that big quadrilogy, which I did a review on way back when, which is my favorite collection of special features like ever, because it's a big giant collection where and it's all from the Alien, all about the Alien movies and the Alien franchise. But there's the first couple of discs. There's all kinds of interviews with Dan O'Bannon, and it's super interesting and super fascinating. It's really like listening to him talk. It's really like going to film school. It's just so awesome. So I've always been a huge Dan O'Bannon fan, and he's just one of my favorites. And of course, Tobe Hooper. I mean, what hasn't been said about Tobe Hooper, and what else can be said about Tobe Hooper? I mean, just one of my favorite directors. He really changed the face of horror forever. He's one of the key figures. He's right up there with, all of the iconic horror film directors of their time. Obviously, most well known for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. one of the most influential horror movies of all time. That movie just single handedly changed horror films forever. And I think in general, films in general, movies in general, just amazing. He obviously gave birth to the massive franchise that is Texas now, where they just recently last year put out a new movie, and it's like a massive franchise. He also directed Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part Two, which I really really love. I just did a show on that. Super underrated movie, a movie that is pretty polarizing, or yeah, has two sides of an audience. Some people really totally embrace it and love that it's so incredibly different from the original, and that it's essentially almost like a black comedy. And then you have this other camp of people where people just absolutely hate that movie and trash that movie because it's so different. I am part of the camp that really loves that movie and just thinks it's one of the best sequels too, for that matter. But Toby Hooper, I mean, he's done some really great movies. He's made a couple of movies that are probably not so great, but and then he also, another film of his that I really love, that I think is one of the best adaptations of a Stephen King book. He directed Salem's Lot, which I think is an awesome movie. Originally, it's a TV movie, but I think it's one of the greatest vampire movies ever. I love that movie to death. He also directed that. He also directed Poltergeist, which was a movie where he started out as, obviously Toby Hooper started out as a real, low budget kind of exploitation director, especially with Texas, which is like one of the, pivotal movies in that whole genre. But he, as a director, I feel like he really had a lot of versatility because he could do a movie that's so low budget and so grimy like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but then, work at the same time. He could work with Steven Spielberg, who wrote and produced Poltergeist, and then he directed Poltergeist, and do a really big budget Hollywood, to a degree, a family film, but it's still very much a horror movie, and it still has those really scary elements, and be really successful. Working, you know, just these great examples of his career where he was able to work completely out of, the conventional Hollywood system, and then also very much be a part of it and still make really great movies and be able to like kind of bounce back and forth. Just super cool. Pretty rare too, like that he could go from kind of the exploitation world and make a big budget horror film, but yet it still is really great quality. And yeah, it's such an awesome movie. And I feel like Life Force, this bad boy right here, is one of his most underrated movies that he's ever done. Um, I I'm always blown away that this movie doesn't get the acclaim. But he also did a bunch of other movies called Eaten Alive, The Funhouse, The Mangler, which is actually a really awesome movie, Invaders from Mars, Crocodile. He also did a pretty bad remake of The Toolbox Murders, which The Toolbox Murders is one of the greatest slasher exploitation movies ever. And he did a kind of a crappy remake of that. But these other films that he also did, The Funhouse and The Mangler, Eaten Alive, like I haven't seen those in years, but I did see them at one point. I remember them all being really, really great. Invaders from Mars also, and Crocodile. Um, he did a bunch of movies for a while that were really great, but some, some were not so great. Like films like, I believe it's Sleepwalkers. You know, not 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 exactly great films, but I think for the most part he made some incredible movies. But one of my favorite movies is this one, Life Force, and I feel like this movie is one of his most under. And I never hear this movie ever talked about, and it's totally bonkers. Like there's a really great interview with Toby Hooper on this in this collection, part of the special features, where he talks a lot about. And this movie has a massive budget. It's wild. Like it is. It's so beautifully shot. The cinematography is just beautiful. The music is just incredible, and it's such a big budget film, but yet it feels uh, like it has this very kind of schlocky vibe to it. Like he says in this interview on in the special features, where he knew, like, he knew going into this movie that it was this huge budget, but he wanted to kind of take that budget and make like a Hammer film out of it. Like that the classic British company where they made all of those like super low budget, kind of campy, kind of silly, but just yet amazing movies in the 60s and 70s and even in the 50s. Most notably known their most Hammer is most notably known for their vampire movies starring Christopher Lee. He wanted to make a big budget version of that kind of thing, and and I think he totally nailed it, because it has this great thing of where it's it's so grand in scale, and the production value is just through the roof. Like, it really is. The transfer of this movie on Blu-ray is staggering. Like, it's amazing. Like, the special effects are just unbelievable, and it's way over the top. There's so much action. The movie is so fun. It there's no downtime in this movie. You're just go go go. You're in that go 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 mode the whole time, and there's always all these great thrills and great things that are happening, great action. But yet it feels like, with given that it's such as it's told with this really huge, the production value is so huge, it feels like at its core, like it's still a real campy, slightly cheesy, kind of exploitation movie. And I love that it has that balance where it's got this massive production value, but then there's also these things of where it has, for me, it has those tropes of the exploitation kind of horror thing where it's like it's really silly. There's this really wild kind of sexual component to it. The storyline is bonkers, like it's totally crazy, and it has the use of the practical effects in this film are just amazing. So it has, like, for me, it has that kind of vibe, and plus it has that, that it was, it's a classic '80s movie, so it has like that horror exploitation kind of vibe and that real campiness to it, but yet it's a massive movie, and it's a really great balance of all those things. But I definitely consider this to be one of the best, like, you know, '80s sci-fi horror exploitation movies. At the end of the day, I just feel like this movie is kind of the epitome of that. Even though it's got this massive budget, but it's just so awesome. And it was adapted from the Space Vampires. That was the original book that it was based on. And it's this movie too, I feel, is one of the most, the story and the way it's executed, I think it's one of the most imaginative movies I've ever seen. Like, it takes the whole kind of vampire mythos or mythology and also the science fiction genre, and just kind of turns both of those things inside out and turns it on its head and fuses those two together, those two kind of genres, where it's unlike anything you've ever seen before, and it's totally crazy and just totally bonkers and so suspenseful. It's just, yeah, it's such a phenomenal movie, and I just don't. The only thing I can attribute to as to why this movie doesn't get talked about very much is because of how out there this movie is. Like I said, I remember seeing this movie as a kid, and I remember the reactions from people around that time, and I think even how, like, people reacted to it, from a in a critical through a critical lens, was that they thought the movie was too weird or was just too strange, which it is. But that's why I love this movie, because it just, there hadn't been too many movies where you had those kinds of genres blended together. Mario Bava the famous Italian director, did a vampire movie that was set in space. But other than that, I don't know too many movies which came out in the 60s. I don't know. I'm not aware of too many movies that really heavily fused those two genres together and so successfully. Just amazing. The music, like I said, is just so incredible. I think it's one of the most gorgeous uh, compositions or music soundtracks or film scores I've ever heard. It's just so epic and beautiful and scary and horrific. Uh, Henry Mancini did the soundtrack for this, and I just think it's some of the best work that he's ever done. Uh, it's just incredible. It really captures that whole aesthetic of fusing those two things together. Just amazing. And Henry Mancini, he was an Italian director or an Italian composer. Um, he's won 4 Academy Awards, Golden Globe, um, and he won 20 Grammy Awards, which is insane. That's totally insane. Um, he did the theme for the Peter Gunn television series, the music for the Pink Panther film series. He also had like some big rock hits. He did the theme for Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, just wild, just wild. But it's easily the best, one of the best aspects of this film. Is the score. It's I said before, like film scores and soundtracks are such a huge influence on me. For the music that I write on for Quantum, and this is one of the greatest scores. It's right up there with like, it's so epic. It's right up there with like, I think, like the work that John Williams did for Star Wars. Just incredible. It's the scope of it and the scale of it is just staggering. Unlike anything, that of its time, really, and in a lot of ways. And again, one of the other things that's so beautiful about this film is the cinematography. And the cinematographer for Life Force was John Charles Dykstra. And again, a world class cinematographer. I mean, he did a lot of the effects for the original Star Wars films. Just, incredible. And he went on to to have this huge, huge career, and he's still around. He did the cinematography for Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Stuart Little, X-Men First Class, Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man by Sam Raimi, and also its sequel, Spider-Man 2 by Sam Raimi. He did the cinematography for those films. Just amazing. Also, he worked on Battlestar Galactica, which I didn't realize, which is such an awesome. I mean, one of the greatest, I think, sci-fi stories ever. But he also did uh, the cinematography for the more modern version of that series. Just awesome. He also worked on Star Trek, the original motion picture, which is so awesome as well. Just so great. So the level of talent on this in this film is just so amazing. And again, the other thing that's so funny about this film is the or funny, but then also incredibly amazing is the use of like the sexuality in this film. There's a great interview on here by Matilda May, who is more or less. the head vampire of this alien race of aliens that are invading and taking over the whole world. And there's multiple scenes of her where she's like totally nude and totally naked. And she was really really young when she made this film, and of course she's completely drop dead gorgeous. But really really interesting, the interview with her, because she had never acted before, and she, her background was, she was a dancer. She was a ballet dancer. She had no experience ever as a. It was her first movie role, and she got pulled into doing this movie, and she was very reluctant to do it because of the nudity scenes. But she said after a while she got really comfortable. But in virtually every scene of the movie, there's full nudity of the movie. You see her, and she's completely nude. But it's so amazing. Not only is she gorgeous, but she's got such an incredible presence on the screen. Definitely that part of it, like the eroticism, and then also, it reminded me a lot of, some of the classic Dracula films. For everything from like Frank Langella, who played Dracula in the 1979 version, which I really really love, and also say Gary Oldman in Scorsese's Dracula, which I think for me is the greatest vampire movie ever made. But those two roles, the way those two actors embodied Dracula, there's a very, even though I think it's on a subtle level, they really embody the character of Dracula, meaning that they have such an incredible presence, and there's like a kind of this unspoken sexuality around it, and they just have incredible presence with their like piercing eyes and their engagement with people. And Matilda May has that essence on screen. I mean, she really has this like startling. Her whole appearance when you first see her is like kind of startling and just like frightening, but then it's very sexual and gorgeous. It's frightening, and yet you're attracted to her at the same time. And to me, that the way she presented herself very much reminds me of those classic portrayals, like I mentioned, of Dracula. And also, the other actor in this who is just really great, he's the lead, is Steve Railsback. And he was a really pretty popular character actor back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and he's still around. But he's also essentially the leading man in this film, and he's a really good actor. I was really blown away by how great a performance that he has. And those characters, Matilda May, who's the essentially like the head vampire, and Steve Railsback, they have this really kind of complicated relationship, but it's centered. They're kind of the centerpiece of the story, while all of this, craziness is happening, and they generally have this really great on-screen presence. But amazing movie, amazing movie. I don't know why people don't talk about this film. I never, in all my travels on YouTube or checking out people, were different YouTubers, whether it's guys or girls, and they're talking about their favorite vampire movies of all time, or their favorite horror movies of all time, science fiction movies, or they might do a show where they'll talk about, films that are less known. I never hear about this movie ever talked about. I never hear this ever brought to never. This movie's never brought to the table, and this is one of the best. This is one of my favorite Tobe Hooper film. It might be my second favorite, and this might be saying a lot, but it might be my favorite film of his, right behind Texas, the original. It's just such an awesome movie. It's the perfect combination of sci-fi and horror. Um, and again, it's one of those tricky things and amazing things where it's super highbrow, but then it has this exploitation element. Classic 80s. Um, it's just so damn good. So damn good. So, if you get a chance, please see this movie. It is one hell of a wild roller coaster of a film. So thanks again. If you like this channel, please like and subscribe. And I love it when people comment on videos, and I love interacting with other film fanatics. So thanks again to everybody out there for supporting this channel, and we will see you next time. Peace.